Commander Sarah Chun felt the cold metal against her back as the cryopod opened. Her eyes slowly adjusted to the dim blue lights of the medical bay. The air tasted stale and recycled. Her body felt heavy and slow after sleeping for so long. She tried to remember how long she had been asleep. The memories came back slowly like pieces of a broken puzzle. 100 years. She had been asleep for 100 years. Sarah pushed herself up from the cryopod and looked around. The medical bay was empty except for the soft humming of machines. Her uniform hung a hook nearby, crisp and clean as if it had been pressed. Yesterday. She dressed quickly, her hands still shaking from the long sleep. The ship felt different. It was too quiet. Where were the sounds of crew members walking in the halls? Where were the voices and laughter that usually filled a warship? Sarah walked to the nearest computer terminal and pressed her hand against the scanner. The screen came to life with a soft blue glow. "Welcome back, Commander Chun," the computer said in its calm voice. "You have been in cryosleep for exactly 103 years, 7 months, and 12 days. "Status report," Sarah said. Her voice sounded rough and dry. "All crew members are still in cryosleep except for you. You were awakened according to emergency protocols. There are urgent messages waiting for you." Sarah felt a cold feeling in her stomach that had nothing to do with the cryosleep. Emergency protocols only activated when something was very wrong. She had commanded the dreadnought Retribution for 15 years before the long sleep. She knew every sound the ship made, every light that should be blinking. This was not normal. "Play the messages," she said. The first message made her blood run cold. It was from Admiral Harrison, the head of Earth's Defense Command. But the timestamp showed it was recorded 98 years ago, just 5 years after the fleet had left Earth. "Commander Chun, if you are hearing this message, then the worst has happened," Admiral Harrison said. His face looked older than Sarah remembered, with new lines around his eyes. "The Galactic Council has voted to quarantine Earth, they say. We are too dangerous, too aggressive for their peaceful galaxy. The quarantine barrier went up 3 days ago. No ships can get in or out of the Sol system." Sarah grabbed the edge of the computer desk to keep from falling. The Galactic Council had been humanity's ally for 200 years. Earth had joined the Council when humans first reached the stars. They had fought alongside alien species against pirates and invaders. They had shared technology and knowledge. How could the Council do this? The message continued. "They sent your fleet away on purpose, Sarah. The threat you were sent to investigate does not exist. It was all a lie to get our strongest warships as far from Earth as possible. By the time you wake up, they will think you are too far away to matter." The Admiral's image flickered as the old recording played. "The Council fears us, Sarah. They fear what humanity might become. They have seen our ships and our weapons. They have seen how fast we learn and grow. So they decided to cage us like animals in a zoo." Sarah felt anger rising in her chest like a fire. The Council had used humanity's honor against them. They had sent Earth's most powerful fleet on a fake mission while they trapped her homeworld. It was the perfect betrayal, using humanity's willingness to help others as a weapon against them. "Show me the fleet status," Sarah ordered. The computer. Numbers filled the screen. 847 ships. 2.5 million crew. Members all still sleeping in their cryopods. The fleet had enough supplies to last for decades. The ships were in perfect condition after a century of automated maintenance. Task Force Ragnarok was still the most powerful military force humanity had ever assembled. Sarah walked to the command deck. Her footsteps echoed in the empty corridors. The ship felt like a tomb, but she knew it was really a sleeping giant. The Council had made a terrible mistake. They thought sending the fleet away would make humanity helpless. Instead, they had placed their greatest threat exactly where it could do the most damage. She reached the command deck and sat in her captain's chair. The main screen showed stars scattered across the black of space. Beautiful and peaceful, but Sarah knew better now. This galaxy was not peaceful. It was ruled by fear and betrayal. "Computer, show me our current location." A star map appeared on the screen. The fleet was 50,000 light-years from Earth, near the edge of the galaxy. Red dots marked Council monitoring stations nearby. The aliens were watching, probably wondering why one human ship had suddenly come to life. Sarah opened the communication channel to the monitoring stations. She wanted them to hear her voice, to know that humanity was awake. "This is Commander Sarah Chun of the Earth Defense Force vessel Retribution," she said. Her voice was calm and cold. "I have received the Council's message about the quarantine of Earth. I want you to send a message back to your leaders. Tell them that Task Force Ragnarok is no longer sleeping. Tell them that humanity remembers its friends. And tell them that we especially remember those who betray us." She closed the channel and turned to study the tactical displays. 847 warships, each one designed for maximum destruction. The Council had feared humanity's military power, so they had tried to remove it from the game. But they had forgotten one important thing about humans. When you corner a predator, it does not lie down and die. It fights back with everything it has. Sarah began to review the ship's computer files. Over the past century, automated systems had continued gathering intelligence. The computer had intercepted thousands of Council communications, mapped their military positions, and analyzed their weaknesses. The information painted a clear picture of what had happened to humanity's colonies and allies. The Council had been busy during the past 100 years. Human colonies had been relocated to make room for alien settlements. Human trade routes had been given to other species. The great human shipyards at Alpha Centauri had been dismantled. Even worse, the Council had begun erasing humanity from galactic history. Textbooks now claimed that humans had contributed little to galactic civilization, but the most painful discovery was in the military files. Human soldiers had continued to serve the Council for decades after the quarantine, fighting and dying for the same aliens who had caged their homeworld. They had died believing they were heroes, never knowing that their leaders had already written off their entire species. Sarah felt the anger growing stronger. The Council had not just betrayed Earth, they had betrayed every human who had ever served in the galactic military. They had betrayed every human who had ever believed in the dream of peaceful cooperation between species. She activated the ship's internal communication system. It was time to wake up the fleet. "All hands, this is Commander Chun. Begin emergency revival procedures for all senior staff. We have a situation that requires immediate attention." Throughout the ship, cryopods began to open. Admiral Torres from the assault carrier Warhawk would be among the first to wake up. Captain Vasquez from the stealth destroyer Shadow of Terra would follow. These were humanity's finest military officers, veterans of a dozen wars fought for the Council's sake. They would not be happy when they learned the truth. Sarah looked out at the stars again. Somewhere among those distant lights was Earth, trapped behind an alien barrier. Her home, her family, her entire species was caged like animals in a zoo. The Council thought they had solved the human problem by removing humanity's claws and teeth. They were about to learn that they had made the biggest mistake in galactic history. Sarah smiled, but there was no warmth in it. It was the smile of a predator who had finally found her prey. The Council wanted to see why humanity was too dangerous for their peaceful galaxy. She was about to give them a demonstration they would never forget. "Computer, begin powering up all weapon systems," she said. "And send a message to the Council leadership. Tell them that Commander Sarah Chun sends her regards. Tell them that humanity is awake and we are coming home." The great warship began to hum with power as systems that had slept for a century came back to life. Across the fleet, other ships were beginning to stir. The Council's monitoring stations would be sending panicked reports back to their leaders. Good, let them panic. Let them remember what it felt like to be afraid. Sarah Chun had been betrayed by the Galactic Council. Her species had been caged and humiliated. Her soldiers had been used and discarded. The Council thought they had removed humanity's greatest threat by sending the fleet away. Instead, they had created their own destruction. And Sarah was going to make sure they understood exactly what that meant. The conference room aboard the Retribution slowly filled with angry voices. Sarah Chun watched as her senior officers entered one by one, their faces showing the same shock and rage she had felt hours earlier. Admiral Marcus Torres was the first to arrive, his massive frame filling the doorway. His dark eyes burned with fury as he took his seat at the large metal table. Captain Elena Vasquez came next, moving like a shadow despite her anger. She commanded the stealth destroyer Shadow of Terra and was known for keeping her emotions hidden. But today, Sarah could see the cold rage in her pale blue eyes. Behind her came Admiral Park from the battleship Thunder, Admiral Williams from the carrier Phoenix, and dozens of other senior officers. "I have read the reports," Admiral Torres said, his voice low and dangerous. "Tell me this is some kind of mistake. Tell me the Council did not really do this to us." Sarah looked around the room at faces she had known for years. These were not politicians or diplomats. They were warriors who had spent their entire careers fighting for the Council. They had bled and died defending alien worlds from pirates and invaders. They had followed orders without question, believing they were making the galaxy a safer place. "It is not a mistake," Sarah said. "The Council planned this betrayal for years. They used our own honor against us. While we were sleeping, they caged our entire species." Captain Vasquez spoke up, her voice quiet but deadly. "The intelligence files show they started planning this before we even left Earth. They knew exactly what they were going to do." Admiral Torres slammed his fist on the table. The sound echoed through the room like a gunshot. "We fought for them. We bled for them. My own son died defending a Zephyrian colony world. And this is how they repay us?" Sarah nodded grimly. "According to the files, over 40,000 human soldiers died in Council service during the past century. They all died believing they were heroes. They never knew their homeworld had been quarantined." The room fell silent. Sarah could feel the weight of that number pressing down on everyone. 40,000 young men and women who had given their lives for allies who had already betrayed them. It was almost too much to bear. Admiral Park leaned forward. "What about our families, our loved ones back on Earth?" "Trapped," Sarah said. "The quarantine barrier prevents all travel in or out of the Sol system. No ships, no communications, nothing. For all we know, they think we are dead." Captain Vasquez pulled up a holographic display showing the Council's military positions. Red dots marked major fleet bases, supply depots, and command centers throughout the galaxy. They have grown comfortable during their century of peace. Most of their fleets are spread thin, focused on patrol duties and showing the flag. "Peace," Admiral Torres spat. "They call it peace while they destroy entire civilizations that refuse to bow down to them. I have been reading the classified files. Do you know how many species have simply vanished during the Council's rule? Hundreds, all written off as natural disasters or internal conflicts." Sarah studied the tactical display. The Council controlled most of the galaxy's inhabited systems, but their forces were designed for maintaining order, not fighting a real war. They had not faced a serious military challenge in over 300 years. "They made one critical mistake," Sarah said. "They thought removing us from the game would make them safe. Instead, they put their greatest threat exactly where it could do the most damage." Admiral Williams looked up from her datapad. "Commander, what are your orders?" Sarah stood and walked to the main display. The star map showed their current position. On the outer rim of the galaxy, around them, dozens of Council monitoring stations kept watch. The aliens probably thought they were observing a defeated enemy, not a predator preparing to strike. "The Council wants to see why humanity is too dangerous for their precious peace," Sarah said. "I think it is time we showed them," she turned back to her officers. "We are going to wake up the entire fleet. Every ship, every crew member. Then we are going to remind the galaxy what human warfare actually looks like." Captain Vasquez smiled for the first time since waking up. It was not a pleasant smile. "My stealth squadrons can take out their monitoring stations first. Blind them. Before they know what is happening." "Good," Sarah said. Admiral Torres, your assault carriers will target their major fleet bases. Hit them hard and fast before they can organize a response. Torres nodded grimly. My fighters are hungry for a real fight. They have been sleeping for a century. Admiral Park, I want your battleships to focus on their supply lines. Cut off their fuel and ammunition. Make them afraid to venture far from their home systems. With pleasure, Commander. Sarah looked around the room at her officers. These were the finest military minds humanity had ever produced. They had been forged in the fires of constant warfare, while the Council had grown soft during centuries of unopposed rule. There is something else, Sarah said. We are not going to be like them. We are not going to target civilian populations or commit genocide. We are going to be surgical, precise, and devastating. We will destroy their military and their government, but we will not become monsters. Admiral Torres frowned. Commander, they betrayed our entire species. They deserve whatever we give them. Yes, they do, Sarah agreed. But we are still human. We do not murder innocents, no matter how angry we are. That is what separates us from them. The officers nodded. Even in their rage, they understood the importance of maintaining their humanity. It was what made them better than their enemies. Begin revival procedures immediately, Sarah ordered. I want every crew member awake within 72 hours. We move out as soon as the fleet is ready. As the officers filed out to return to their ships, Captain Vasquez lingered behind. Commander, there is something else in the intelligence files. Something you need to see. Sarah raised an eyebrow. What is it? Vasquez activated a secure display. The Council has been monitoring us this entire time. They know exactly where we are and what condition our ships are in. But they also sent us regular updates about Earth. Updates? Status reports, population numbers, technological development. They have been watching our homeworld very carefully. Almost like they were planning something else. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Show me. The display filled with data about Earth, population growth, industrial output, military development. But there were other things too. Geological surveys, atmospheric analysis, resource mapping. It looked like the kind of information you would gather if you were planning an invasion. They are not just keeping us quarantined, Sarah realized. They are studying us, learning everything they can about our capabilities and weaknesses. It gets worse, Vasquez said. Look at this. Another file opened showing Council fleet movements over the past decade. Slowly but steadily, alien warships had been moving closer to the Sol system. Not close enough to trigger the automatic defense systems, but close enough to respond quickly if needed. They are preparing for something, Sarah said. The quarantine was just the first step, Vasquez nodded grimly. I think they plan to eliminate humanity entirely. They are just waiting for the right moment. Sarah stared at the data, feeling her anger transform into something colder and more dangerous. The Council had not just betrayed humanity. They were planning to destroy them completely. The quarantine was not a cage, it was a holding pen. They were keeping humanity trapped until they were ready to finish the job. Change of plans, Sarah said quietly. Send a priority message to all ship commanders. Tell them we are not just going home, we are going to war. She turned to face Vasquez. The Council thinks they are the predators and we are the prey. They think they can study us and plan our destruction at their leisure. They are about to learn the difference between a civilization that talks about war and a species that lives it. Throughout the fleet, cryopods continued to open. 2.5 million of humanity's finest warriors were waking up to learn that their species had been betrayed. They were soldiers who had fought in the Centauri Wars, the vegan conflicts, and dozens of other battles. They had never known defeat. On the bridge of the Retribution, Sarah watched as ship after ship reported ready status. The massive dreadnought began to hum with power as weapon systems that had slept for a century came back to life. Around her, other ships were doing the same. The fleet was waking up like a sleeping dragon. Commander, the communications officer called out. We are receiving transmission from the Council monitoring stations. They are demanding that we respond to their queries about our increased activity, Sarah smiled coldly. Tell them we received their message about the quarantine. Tell them that Task Force Ragnarok thanks them for the wake-up call. And tell them to send our regards to the Council leadership. She paused, thinking about Earth trapped behind its barrier. Thinking about 40,000 dead soldiers who had died for nothing. Thinking about the Council's plans to destroy her. Species entirely. Actually, send them one more message, Sarah said. Tell them that humanity is no longer interested in their peace. Tell them that they have declared war on the wrong species. And tell them that we are coming. The fleet began to move. 847 warships turning away from their patrol route and heading toward Council space. Behind them, the monitoring stations sent panicked messages to their commanders. The aliens had expected the humans to accept their fate quietly, like so many other species before them. They were about to learn that humans were different. They were about to discover what happened when you betrayed the descendants of apex predators. The Council had wanted to see why humanity was too dangerous for their galaxy. Sarah Chun was about to show them exactly why. Task Force Ragnarok vanished from Council sensors like smoke in the wind. One moment, 847 human warships showed clearly on every alien monitoring station. The next moment, they were gone. The Council's most advanced detection systems showed nothing but empty space where the human fleet had been, on the bridge of the Retribution. Sarah Chun watched the tactical display with satisfaction. Humanity's stealth technology had improved greatly during the past 2 centuries. What the Council did not know was that every human ship had been designed to disappear when needed. They had learned this trick during the wars with space pirates, when being invisible meant the difference between life and death. Stealth fields are holding at maximum efficiency, reported Lieutenant Commander Hayes from the sensor station. The Council monitoring stations are scanning frantically, but they cannot find us. Sarah nodded. The first part of her plan was working perfectly. The Council expected humans to fight like the other species they had conquered. Stand in lines, follow rules, announce their attacks like gentlemen. They had forgotten that humans learned warfare from predators who hunted in the dark. Signal the fleet, Sarah ordered. Begin Operation Ghost Hunt. All ships are to break into their assigned hunter groups and proceed to primary targets. Across the invisible fleet, 847 warships split into smaller groups. Each group had a specific mission. Some would target Council military bases. Others would hit supply lines and communication networks. The largest groups would hunt the Council's main battle fleets. Admiral Torres spoke from the communication screen. His assault carrier Warhawk was leading a strike force toward the Zephyrian home system. My fighters are ready, Commander. We will hit their crystal farms first. No crystals means no power for their energy weapons. Good hunting, Admiral, Sarah replied. The Zephyrians were one of the most powerful Council species. Their crystal technology powered most of the Council's advanced weapons. Destroying their crystal farms would be like cutting the heart out of the Council's military. Captain Vasquez appeared on another screen. Her stealth destroyer Shadow of Terra was leading a group of 12 stealth ships toward the galaxy's central communication hub. We will cut their communications first, Commander. Blind and deaf enemies make easier targets? Sarah smiled grimly. Vasquez understood the importance of information warfare. The Council's greatest strength was their ability to coordinate attacks across thousands of light years. Without communications, they would be reduced to individual systems fighting alone. The first strikes came without warning. Captain Vasquez's stealth ships appeared suddenly in the Altara system, home to the Council's primary communication relay. The massive space station that connected half the galaxy's communications networks never saw the attack coming. 12 human destroyers materialized from nothing and unleashed everything they had. The station's shields held for exactly 17 seconds. Human kinetic weapons, accelerated to incredible speeds, punched through alien energy barriers like bullets. Through paper. The communication relay exploded in a brilliant flash of light. taking with it the Council's ability to coordinate their response. Across the galaxy, Council commanders suddenly found themselves cut off from their superiors. Emergency frequencies crackled with panicked voices asking for orders that would never come. The aliens had grown used to fighting with perfect information and instant communication. Now they were deaf and blind. Admiral Torres struck next. His assault carrier group dropped out of stealth near Zephyr Prime, the crystal world that powered the Council's energy weapons. The planet's orbital defenses were impressive, consisting of hundreds of automated weapon platforms and energy shields. That could stop a meteor. They were not designed to stop angry humans. Torres launched every fighter he had. 3,000 small, fast ships swarmed toward the planet like angry wasps. The Zephyrian defenses opened fire, filling space with deadly energy beams. But human fighters were built for speed and maneuverability. They danced between the energy blasts, too fast and too small for the alien weapons to track effectively. The fighters reached the crystal farms and began their work. Instead of using explosives, they used something much more effective: sonic charges. The crystals that powered Zephyrian technology were grown in perfect harmonic frequencies. Disrupt those frequencies and the crystals shattered like glass within. Minutes, centuries of crystal growth were reduced to glittering dust. The Zephyrian energy weapons went dark across a dozen star systems. Their ships became helpless metal shells drifting in space, but the Council's response was swift and massive. Admiral Keffer of the Collective led a fleet of 2,000 ships toward the last known position of the human fleet. The Collective were hive-minded aliens who could coordinate their attacks with perfect precision. They had never lost a major battle. They found nothing but empty space. The human fleet had already moved on to their next targets. While Admiral Keffer searched empty space, human strike groups were hitting Council supply depots across the galaxy. Admiral Park's battleships appeared without warning at the Rigel fuel depot. Destroying enough antimatter to power the Council fleet for a year, the Council's military leaders began to panic. They were used to fighting enemies who announced their intentions, who followed the traditional rules of warfare. The humans were fighting like ghosts, striking without warning and vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. High Admiral Zarek of the Ascended called an emergency council session. The energy beings who claimed to be evolved beyond physical form gathered in their crystal chambers, their forms flickering with worry. The humans are not fighting like a civilized species, Zarek complained. They strike military targets without declaring war. They use stealth technology to avoid honorable combat. This is not how warfare should be conducted. Admiral Veltar of the Collective nodded agreement. They are fighting like primitives. Like animals? We must respond with overwhelming force. The Council's decision was unanimous. They would gather their remaining fleets and crush the human threat once and for all. Every available ship was ordered to converge on the core worlds, where they would form an unbreakable wall of firepower. Sarah Chun watched the Council's response from the bridge of the Retribution. Her intelligence officers had cracked the Council's emergency communication codes decades ago. She could hear every panicked order, every desperate plan. They are doing exactly what I expected, she told her senior staff. They are pulling their fleets back to defend their most important worlds. That leaves their outer colonies unprotected. Admiral Torres appeared on the communication screen. His face was grim but satisfied. The Zephyrian crystal farms are completely destroyed, Commander. Their energy weapons are offline across 12 systems. Excellent work. What are your casualties? 17 fighters lost, 43 damaged. The aliens never expected us to use sonic weapons against their crystals. They had no defense prepared. Sarah nodded. Human military doctrine emphasized using the enemy's strengths against them. The Zephyrians were proud of their crystal technology. They had never considered that the same harmonic frequencies that made their crystals powerful also made them vulnerable. Captain Vasquez reported next. Communication networks are down across the core sectors, Commander. The Council's coordination is broken. They are fighting blind. Perfect. What about the Collective's hive nodes? Vasquez smiled coldly. That is our next target. My stealth ships are already moving into position. The collective's hive nodes were the key to their military strength. These massive space stations allowed millions of alien minds to link together and coordinate their actions with perfect precision. Destroy the nodes and the collective would be reduced to individual ships acting without coordination. Sarah's plan was working perfectly. The Council had expected humanity to fight like every other species they had conquered. Stand in formation. Exchange honorable fire, accept defeat when outnumbered. Instead, the humans were fighting like the apex predators they had evolved from. Commander, the sensor officer called out. Long-range scanners are detecting massive fleet movements. The Council is pulling ships from every system and sending them toward their core worlds. Sarah studied the tactical display. Thousands of alien ships were converging on the galaxy's center, abandoning their patrol routes and defensive positions. It was exactly what she had hoped for. Signal the fleet, she ordered. Phase 2 of Operation Ghost Hunt is now in effect. All strike groups are to begin hitting the outer colonies while the Council fleets are out of position. Across the galaxy, human warships began appearing at lightly defended Council colonies. Without their main fleets to protect them, these worlds were helpless against human attack. But the humans did not target civilian populations. Instead, they focused on military installations, government buildings, and industrial facilities. Planet after planet found their orbital defenses destroyed, their military bases reduced to rubble, their ability to support the Council war effort eliminated. The humans struck fast and hard, then vanished before reinforcements could arrive. The psychological effect was devastating. Council species that had never known defeat suddenly found themselves under attack by an enemy they could not see coming. Panic spread through the alien populations as news of the attacks reached every corner of the galaxy. On the bridge of the Retribution, Sarah watched the reports flooding in. Her fleet had destroyed or damaged over 300 Council military installations in just 2 weeks. They had eliminated the enemy's communication network, crippled their energy weapon production, and forced their fleets into defensive positions. But she knew this was just the beginning. The Council still had thousands of ships and billions of soldiers. They would adapt to human tactics eventually. The real test would come when the alien fleet stopped running and started fighting back. Commander, Lieutenant Commander Hayes reported, we are receiving transmission from Admiral Kethfer of the Collective. He is demanding that we meet his fleet in honorable combat. Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. Tell Admiral Kethfer that humans do not fight for honor. We fight to win. If he wants to face us, he can try to find us first. She turned to study the tactical display showing Council fleet positions. The aliens were learning to fear human stealth technology, but they had not yet figured out how to counter it. Their sensors could not penetrate human cloaking fields. Their weapons could not hit targets they could not see. The Council had created this war when they betrayed humanity. They had expected it to be easy like all their previous conquests. They thought removing Earth's main fleet would leave humanity defenseless. Instead, they had unleashed something their civilized minds could not understand. They had declared war on a species that had spent millions of years learning to hunt in the dark. Now they were about to discover what it felt like to be the prey. Sarah smiled as she watched another Council fleet search frantically for human ships that were already gone. The hunt was just beginning, and the Council was learning what every predator's victim eventually discovered. There was nowhere to hide when the hunters came calling. The Council's core worlds burned, not with fire or explosions, but with something far worse for their ordered civilization. Fear. For 3 months, human strike forces had hit targets across the galaxy with surgical precision. Military bases reduced to scrap metal, communication networks cut to pieces, supply lines severed like broken chains. High Admiral Zarek of the Ascended stood in the crystal chamber that served as the Council's war room. His energy form flickered with frustration as he studied the holographic display showing the damage. Red markers covered the map like a disease, each one representing a successful human attack. They are not fighting like any civilized species. Zarek said, his voice filled with electronic static. They strike without warning, show no mercy to our military forces, and vanish before we can respond. This is barbaric warfare. Admiral Kethfer of the Collective nodded, his insect-like head twitching with agitation. My hive fleets have searched 17 systems where human attacks were reported. We found nothing but wreckage. They are like ghosts that leave only destruction behind. Commander Velinara of the Zephyrians spoke from her crystal podium. Our energy weapon production is down by 80%. The humans somehow knew exactly which frequencies would shatter our crystal farms. They studied us, learned our weaknesses, and used them against us. The truth was becoming clear to the council leaders, though none wanted to admit it. They had underestimated humanity completely. They had thought removing Earth's fleet would make the human species helpless. Instead, they had placed their most dangerous enemy exactly where it could do the most damage, on the outer rim of council space. Sarah Shan sat in her command chair aboard the Retribution. The past 3 months had been a masterclass in human warfare. Her fleet had struck over 400 targets without losing a single ship. The Council's mighty military machine was being taken apart piece by piece. "Status report," Sarah ordered, "Lieutenant." Commander Hayes consulted his displays. "Admiral Torres reports successful destruction of the Altarian shipyards. That eliminates another 15% of the Council's ship production capability. Captain Vasquez has taken out 3 more collective hive nodes. Their coordination is breaking down across 7 sectors." Sarah nodded with satisfaction. The plan was working better than she had hoped. The Council's greatest strength had always been their ability to coordinate massive fleets across impossible distances. Without that coordination, they were just individual ships and worlds fighting alone. What about enemy fleet movements? "They are still pulling back toward the core worlds," Hayes replied. "Latest intelligence shows over 6,000 Council ships concentrated around their most important systems. They are leaving the outer colonies almost defenseless." Sarah studied the tactical display. The Council was making exactly the mistake she had hoped for. They were so focused on protecting their centers of power that they were abandoning everything else. It was the reaction of leaders who had never faced a real military threat. "Signal all strike group commanders," Sarah ordered. "Begin Phase 3 of Ghost Hunt. Target every major industrial facility in the outer systems. I want their ability to build ships and weapons completely eliminated." Across the galaxy, human warships began appearing at Council industrial worlds. These planets had been lightly defended for centuries, protected by the assumption that no enemy could penetrate so deeply into Council space. The humans proved that assumption fatally wrong. Admiral Park's battleships materialized above the manufacturing world of Nexus 7. The planet's orbital shipyards had been building Council warships for over 200 years. Within an hour, they were floating debris. Park ships used kinetic projectiles fired at tremendous speed, turning the massive construction facilities into clouds of twisted metal. The planet's population watched in terror as their entire industrial base was destroyed in minutes. But the humans did not target civilian areas. They struck only military and industrial targets, leaving the alien population unharmed but completely helpless. Captain Vasquez led her stealth destroyers against the Collective's primary computer manufacturing center on Gamma Reticuli. The hive-minded aliens depended on advanced computers to link their minds together across space. Without those computers, they could not maintain their collective consciousness. Vasquez's ships appeared without warning and launched specialized VIRUS bombs. These weapons infected every computer system on the planet with software designed specifically to disrupt collective neural networks. Within minutes, millions of alien minds were cut off from the hive, leaving them confused and unable to coordinate. The psychological impact was enormous. The collective had never experienced mental isolation before. Individual aliens found themselves thinking alone for the first time in their lives. Many suffered complete mental breakdowns. Others simply shut down, unable to function without the constant connection to their hive mind. But the most devastating attack came from Admiral Torres. His assault carriers struck at the heart of the Ascended's power base on Omega Centauri. The energy beings claimed to have evolved beyond physical form, but they still needed special crystals to maintain their existence in normal space. Torres had studied the Ascended for months, learning how their energy forms depended on harmonic resonance crystals. His fighters swarmed the crystal gardens where these vital minerals were grown, using sonic charges to shatter them into worthless dust. The effect was immediate and terrible. Ascended energy forms began flickering and failing as their anchor points in reality disappeared. Some managed to retreat to backup crystals on other worlds. Others simply faded away, their consciousness scattered across dimensions they could no longer navigate. High Admiral Zarek himself barely escaped destruction when his personal crystal, Matrix, was targeted by human fighters. He retreated to the Council's emergency bunker on the capital world, his energy form weak and unstable. The Council's emergency session was held in a fortified chamber deep underground. The alien leaders who had once ruled the galaxy with absolute confidence now huddled together like frightened animals. Their military forces were in retreat. Their industrial base was being systematically destroyed. Their coordination was broken. "We must offer terms," suggested Commander Velanara. "Perhaps if we restore Earth status and lift the quarantine, the humans will stop their attacks." Admiral Kethvar's insect eyes glowed with anger. "Surrender to primitives? Never. We still have 6,000 ships concentrated around our core worlds. We can crush them if they dare to attack us directly." High Admiral Zarek's energy form flickered. "Weakly, the humans will not attack us directly. They are not fighting for honor or glory. They are fighting to destroy us completely. They will continue these raids until we have nothing left." The truth of Zarek's words hung heavy in the chamber. The humans were not interested in glorious battles or honorable victories. They were systematically eliminating the Council's ability to make war. Every attack weakened the aliens further while the human fleet remained untouched. On the bridge of the Retribution, Sarah received a priority communication from Council leadership. She listened to their offer with cold amusement. They were willing to restore Earth status, lift the quarantine, and even pay reparations for their betrayal. Sarah's response was broadcast on all frequencies so every Council world could hear it. "You declared war on humanity when you betrayed us. You caged our species like animals in a zoo. You used our honor against us and thought we would simply accept defeat. You were wrong." She paused, letting her words sink in across the galaxy. "We are not interested in your apologies or your bribes. We are showing you what human warfare actually looks like. This is what happens when you betray the descendants of apex predators," the message continued. "You wanted to judge whether humanity deserved to survive in your galaxy. Instead, you have proven that your council does not deserve to exist at all." The impact of Sarah's words was immediate. Across Council space, alien populations began demanding answers from their leaders. Why had they betrayed humanity? Why had they started a war they could not win? Why had they awakened a sleeping giant that was now destroying everything they had built? Some worlds began declaring independence from the Council, hoping to avoid human attacks. Others surrendered without fighting, broadcasting messages of apology and submission. The great galactic alliance that had ruled for centuries was beginning to crumble from within. But the Council leadership was not ready to give up. In desperation, they made their final gambit. They sent a message to Sarah threatening to destroy the soul barrier and annihilate Earth itself if the human attacks did not stop. Sarah read the message and smiled coldly. It was exactly what she had been waiting for. The Council's true nature was finally revealed for all to see. Their talk of peace and civilization was just a mask hiding the threat of genocide. "Record this message for broadcast across the galaxy," Sarah ordered. She wanted every alien world to hear what she was about. "To say, to the Council leadership and all who serve them," Sarah began, "your latest message reveals the truth behind your so-called peaceful civilization. You threaten to commit genocide against my species if we do not submit to your will. This is how you have always ruled. Not through wisdom or justice, but through the threat of extinction. She leaned forward, her eyes burning with cold fury. Let me make something very clear. If you harm one human being on Earth, we will not stop until every council world is reduced to ash. If you touch our homeworld, we will show you what total war really means. The message was broadcast across the galaxy, revealing the council's genocidal threats to every alien population. The reaction was swift and devastating. Entire star systems revolted against council rule. Military units refused orders. The careful structure of galactic government began collapsing like a house of cards. Sarah watched the reports flooding in with grim satisfaction. The council had made their final mistake. They had revealed themselves as the monsters they truly were. Now the galaxy would see who the real barbarians had been all along. Commander, Lieutenant Commander Hayes reported. Long-range sensors are detecting massive fleet movements. The Council is dispersing their core fleets. It looks like they are preparing for a final desperate attack. Sarah nodded. She had expected this. Cornered predators were always most dangerous when they had nothing left to lose. The Council would throw everything they had at the human fleet in one last attempt to win the war they had started. Signal the fleet, Sarah ordered. Prepare for Operation Final Hunt. It is time to end this war once and for all. The Council wanted to see why humanity was too dangerous for their peaceful galaxy. Sarah Chun was about to give them a demonstration they would never forget. The reckoning had come at last. The final battle began not with massive fleets clashing in space, but with the truth. Deep in the data cores of captured Council facilities, human intelligence officers made a discovery that changed everything. The files they found painted a picture of horror that stretched back thousands of years. Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez sat in the intelligence center aboard the Retribution, staring at translated documents that made her stomach turn. She had been analyzing captured Council records for weeks, looking for tactical information. What she found was evidence of the greatest crime in galactic history. Commander Chun to the intelligence center immediately, Rodriguez called over the ship's communication system. Her voice was shaking with rage and disgust. Sarah arrived within minutes, accompanied by Admiral Torres and Captain Vasquez. The three senior officers looked at the holographic displays showing document after document of Council records. What did you find, Lieutenant? Sarah asked. Rodriguez took a deep breath. Commander, the Council has been lying about everything. Their peaceful civilization is built on the bones of hundreds of murdered species. Look at this. The display showed a map of the galaxy from 1,000 years ago. Thousands of colored dots marked different species and their territories. Rodriguez touched a control and the map shifted forward in time. Slowly but steadily, the colored dots began disappearing. Each dot represents an intelligent species, Rodriguez explained. Watch what happens over the centuries. Sarah watched in growing horror as species after species vanished from the map. Some disappeared slowly as if their populations had declined. Over time, others vanished all at once, entire civilizations wiped out in single years. The official Council records call these natural disasters, civil wars or voluntary relocations, Rodriguez continued. But I found the real files. The classified ones that explain what really happened. A new document appeared on the screen. It was a military order from Council leadership dated 800 years ago. The target was a species called the Kelani, described as too individualistic and resistant to Council authority. The Kelani were artists and philosophers, Rodriguez said quietly. They refused to join the Council because they valued their independence. So the Council destroyed them. Completely. Poisoned their atmosphere, made their worlds uninhabitable, then claimed it was a natural plague. Admiral Torres slammed his fist against the wall. How many? Over 400 species in the past 1,000 years, Rodriguez replied. All of them guilty of the same crime. They wanted to remain free. Sarah felt a cold rage building in her chest. The Council had not just betrayed humanity. They were serial killers on a galactic scale, wiping out any species that refused to bow down to their authority. Show me the most recent files, Sarah ordered. Rodriguez brought up documents from the past century. They call it the Purification Protocol. Any species that shows signs of becoming too powerful or independent gets marked for elimination. Humanity has been on the list for over 50 years. The display showed detailed plans for humanity's destruction. The quarantine had been just the first step. The Council had planned to wait until Earth's population reached a certain point, then release a manufactured plague that would kill every human in the galaxy. The remaining humans would be blamed for the outbreak and hunted down by other species. They were going to frame us for our own genocide, Captain Vasquez said quietly. Sarah studied the files with growing fury. The Council's peace had been purchased with the blood of countless species. They ruled through fear and genocide, eliminating anyone who threatened their control. Humanity had simply been next on their list. Signal all ship commanders, Sarah ordered. Emergency conference in 1 hour. And Lieutenant Rodriguez, prepare copies of all these files. Every species in the galaxy needs to see the truth. The emergency conference brought together every senior officer in the human fleet. The mood in the communication center was dark as admiral after admiral learned the truth about the Council's crimes. These were professional soldiers who had seen war in all its forms, but the scope of the Council's genocide left them speechless. "Are not just fighting for humanity anymore," Sarah told her officers. "We are fighting for every species the Council has murdered over the past 1,000 years. We are fighting for every civilization they plan to destroy in the future." Admiral Torres spoke up, his voice heavy with anger. "What are your orders, Commander?" Sarah looked around at the faces of her officers. These were the finest military minds humanity had ever produced. They had been betrayed, hunted, and marked for extinction, but they had survived. More than survived, they had thrived. "We are going to end the Council permanently," Sarah said. "Not just defeat them, not just force them to surrender. We are going to make sure they can never threaten another species again." The plan Sarah outlined was comprehensive and merciless. The human fleet would strike at every remaining Council stronghold simultaneously. But first they would broadcast the truth about the Council's crimes to every world in the galaxy. Within hours, the classified files were being transmitted across space. Alien populations who had lived under Council rule for centuries learned the truth about their government. They discovered that their peaceful leaders were actually mass murderers who had eliminated hundreds of species. The reaction was immediate and violent. On world after world, alien populations rose up against their Council governors. Species that had served the Council for generations turned on their masters when they learned about the genocide programs. The Great Galactic Alliance began tearing itself apart from within, but the Council leadership was not finished. In their fortress on the capital world of Prima, High Admiral Zarek and his remaining allies prepared for their final gambit. If they could not rule the galaxy, they would destroy it rather than let others have it. "Activate the final protocol," Zarek ordered. His energy form was weak and flickering, barely held together by emergency crystals. "If we cannot maintain order, then there will be chaos." The final protocol was the Council's ultimate weapon. Hidden throughout the galaxy were quantum bombs capable of destroying entire star systems. The Council had placed them near every major population center as the ultimate tool of control. No species had ever dared rebel because the Council could destroy their homeworlds. With the press of a button, now Zarek was preparing to use them all at once. If the Council fell, he would take billions of lives with him. Sarah Shun detected the quantum signature changes across the galaxy as the bombs began powering up. Her sensor officers had been monitoring for exactly this possibility. The Council had revealed their final atrocity, and humanity was ready for it. "All ships implement Operation Mercy," Sarah ordered. "Every quantum bomb location is a priority target. We have 18 hours before they reach critical mass." What followed was the greatest rescue operation in galactic history. 847 human warships spread across the galaxy, racing against time to reach quantum bomb sites before they could detonate. Each bomb was powerful enough to destroy an entire star system and everyone in it. Admiral Torres led a strike force to the vegan system, where 12 billion aliens lived under the shadow of a quantum bomb hidden in their system's asteroid belt. His ships found the weapon with minutes to spare, using specialized equipment to disarm the quantum reaction before it could cascade. Captain Vasquez raced to the collective's home system, where the hive-minded aliens faced extinction from their former masters. Her stealth ship slipped past the bomb's automated defenses and cut the power links that would have triggered the explosion across the galaxy. Human ships worked frantically to save alien populations that had been marked for death by their own government. It was a massive gamble. If they failed to find even one bomb, billions would die. But humanity had advantages the Council had forgotten. They were used to working under pressure. They were experts at finding hidden weapons from their wars against pirates and terrorists. Most importantly, they had something the Council lacked. They actually cared about saving innocent lives. One by one, the quantum bombs were found and disarmed. Human engineers worked side by side with alien technicians who had joined the rebellion against Council rule. Species that had been enemies for centuries, united in the face of threatened extinction. The last bomb was found with only 7 minutes remaining. It was hidden in the capital system itself, placed there by the Council as insurance against their own population. Admiral Park's battleships raced through the system's defenses while engineers worked to decode the weapon's final safeguards. Bomb disarmed, came the report with 3 minutes to spare. All quantum weapons are now offline. On Prima, High Admiral Zarek stared at his control panel in disbelief. Every quantum bomb had failed to detonate. His ultimate weapon had been neutralized by the same species he had planned to exterminate. Impossible, he whispered. They could not have found them all, but they had. And now the human fleet was converging on Prima for the final confrontation. Sarah. June stood on the bridge of the Retribution as the human fleet dropped out of stealth around the Council's capital world. 847 warships appeared as one. Their weapons trained on the planet below, but there would be no orbital bombardment, no massacre of civilians. Sarah had not become a monster to defeat monsters. Instead, she broadcast a message to the planet below. Citizens of Prima, this is Commander Sarah Chun of the Earth Defense Force. Your government has fallen. The Council's crimes have been exposed. You have 1 hour to surrender the remaining Council leadership for trial. The response came quickly. The planet's own defense forces, learning the truth about their leader's crimes, turned on the Council bunkers. Within the hour, High Admiral Zarek and his surviving allies were in custody. Their reign of terror finally ended. Sarah sent a message to Earth, transmitted through the ruins of the Council's communication network. Sol Command, this is Task. Force Ragnarok. The quarantine has been lifted. The Council is ended. We are coming home. The response from Earth came 12 hours later, carried by the first human ship to leave the Sol system in over a century. It was Admiral Harrison now. Ancient but still serving as Earth's defense coordinator. Commander Chun, this is Admiral Harrison. Welcome home. The entire human race owes you a debt that can never be repaid. But Sarah was not interested in gratitude. She was interested in justice. In the months that followed, trials were held across the galaxy. Council leaders were forced to answer for centuries of genocide and oppression. The evidence was overwhelming. The verdict unanimous. The galactic community that emerged from the Council's ashes was very different. Instead of a single ruling body, it became a loose federation where each species maintained its independence. The principles were simple: no forced membership, no threats of extinction, no genocide disguised as peace. Humanity took its place as one of the founding members of this new galactic alliance. But they also served as its guardians, making sure that no species would ever again face the threat of extinction for wanting to remain free. Sarah June retired from active service and returned to Earth, but her legacy lived on in the human officers who continued to patrol the galaxy. They carried a simple message to every species they encountered. Freedom was not negotiable. Independence was not a crime. and anyone who threatened genocide would face the full wrath of humanity. The Council had wanted to judge whether humanity deserved to survive in their galaxy. Instead, they had proven that the galaxy deserved to be free from their tyranny. The war was over, but the peace that followed was built on justice rather than fear. And across the stars, hundreds of species lived free because humanity had refused to accept the cage that others had built for them.